Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here with our next participants in the Fixing It Forward project. This is Bryan and Jerry Hall who have brought this. What year Nissan is this?
2003.
A 2003 Nissan
Sentra
SE-R. Oh, it's an SE-R, so it's a race car.
It was.
It was a race car.
Time.
So guys, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got here, and then we'll start talking about the issues that you're having with the car.
Okay, I'll start off on that. Once again, we approached Eric on this. I'm a veteran. I was injured in the service in 1966. I have been working since then, but as age gets upon me, I've been having difficulty finding jobs. And to add into it, in the dot-com collapse, my 401k program went down the tubes. So it's been tough these last years. I'm now 68 years old, being treated by the VA and limited income from disability, Social Security. And my son Bryan found you on the internet, who's been following some of the projects you did, and you had mentioned at one time that you were looking for perhaps a veteran to help.
Absolutely, right. And you were a Vietnam veteran, correct?
Vietnam era veteran, yes. I got injured in the service on an aircraft carrier, and a disabled plane made a landing and parts of it came down, and I was on the bottom end of the part of the wing in the landing gear.
So a plane fell on you?
Literally a plane fell on me.
Well, sorry to hear about that, but thank you for your service for sure.
You're welcome.
But yeah, having a plane fall on you, that doesn't sound like fun at all.
Disrupts your life.
I'm sure it does. And you've been dealing with that ever since.
Been dealing with it ever since.
And
I had closed head trauma, brain injury. Got out of the service in 1969. And as I get older, it gets much, much worse.
So you've been dealing with this since 1969?
That's correct.
Oh, wow, that's quite a long time. So, Bryan, you bring him to me, and you were also talking about, because you live down in Kentucky. Tennessee. So you're quite a ways away from him, so you can't necessarily help him directly.
4 years ago, I bought the car for my father because one of his other cars had died. And so before I brought it up to him, I worked on it. I did the brakes, took care of the shocks, took care of everything. But he puts on 40, 50,000 miles in a year at times. And so the time has come where it's got 255,000 on the clock. It's got a bad front wheel bearing. All the shocks are bad. The back brakes are worn. It's got a misfire code. The sensors have tested good, but that means the timing chain is stretched, and a lot of that is stuff I just can't handle, especially being 5.5 hours away.
Sure.
And I don't have a shop for it.
All right, so what was that list again? You had quite a list there with this car. First of all, we've got a lot of miles on it.
Right, a whole lot of miles.
A whole lot of miles on it.
The timing chain appears to have stretched because it's the original timing chain.
Okay.
It's got the multiple misfire codes as a result of that.
Okay.
It's got an evap purge error that keeps coming back.
Okay.
All 4 shocks appear to be bad because when you push on it, it's just, you hit a pothole, you're going to get thrown through the roof.
Okay.
It's just, that's it. The engine does pull, transmission shifts. Everything else around it, though, not so much anymore. So
what you're thinking is this may be a situation where we look this over, we may need to find a replacement for this car rather than trying to fix it.
Honestly,
is what you think?
If it's going to be repairable, it's going to be right on the razor's edge.
Right.
There's going to be one defining quality that you find when you dig into it that says, you know what, it's got this still, okay.
The paint's pretty good.
You haven't seen it on the other side.
Is there anything else you can share with us about the car or about
it's been a very good car, and as Bryan said, I do consulting work, so I drive a lot throughout the state.
Okay.
And that's the reason it's got high mileage. My other vehicle that just died had 305,000 miles on it, and that was a Ford Freestar van, and it hydrolocked.
If you check the forums, I think I mentioned that because I actually frequent there.
Okay.
That's how I knew about you.
Okay. I think I might remember Freestar, something like that.
It was the Ford Freestar, and it's like, yeah, it finally gave up the ghost. It hydro-locked in cylinders 2 and 3, and it's just gone.
Oh, well.
So that's the reason, we're trying to get this fixed to see if it's worth doing. I still do consulting work. It's a good way to pick up some extra money.
Okay.
And that's the reason we're here.
So you need to get around.
I need to get around.
You need to get around in something dependable because you're going to be putting some miles on it.
That's right.
And we also have to take that into consideration with how many miles are on this vehicle.
Right.
Okay, Bryan, Jerry, that's plenty for us to get started on.
Eric, thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. And once again, thank you for your service.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for bringing this out. And I guess it's time for us to look this car over and get started. One of the first things I think we should do with Jerry's car is take it out for a drive. They talked about basically a laundry list of things that are going on with it. Let's drive it. One of the things I did notice is it does seem to take quite a bit of time for it to turn over. Well, that time it started right up, but it was cranking for a long time before it actually caught. And it did that a couple of times, and actually Bryan had mentioned that that was something new. I guess it just doesn't like me. All right, well, let's start with the drive. They mentioned the suspension was having issues, also wheel bearing, also brakes. But really, I think what we're trying to determine here is if this car is worth saving. We honestly don't want another situation with a 1998 Chrysler Town Country that we've worked on in the past. I hear a little exhaust leak. And being that it's a Nissan, I'm guessing there's a flex pipe under there that's probably leaking. But acceleration, Nissan builds a killer engine, they really do. So far I'm not feeling the suspension issues that Bryan mentioned. They're nothing that bad. The tires are a bit noisy. I don't know if that's a wheel bearing noise or not. Let's try the brakes. A little bit of a pulsation, but this car isn't coming off as bad as it sounded initially. It does, there you go, every little bump in the road, you do feel it, but I'm starting to wonder if the tires are overinflated, if it might be something that simple. But the recovery is there. If this had bad struts, it would leave the road and maybe go all over the place for a while before I was able to maintain control. I'm not feeling that. I'm just feeling either tires that are old or tires that may be overinflated. Also, this cover here making noise on the dash. That's not helping. Steering wheel cover. Could probably use a steering wheel cover, but those are cheap. And the brakes, I mean, see what I mean?
I hate when you do that. God. Annoying bastard.
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes. Yeah, a little bit.
In high school.
Well, I have to test the brakes, and to me, it seems like the brakes are good. They feel solid anyway. Let's see how the transmission shifts. There's the wheel bearing noise. If I'm gonna guess on this, like all of a sudden there's the wheel bearing noise, which that's interesting because it wasn't there before. I would think wheel bearing problem would be there all the time. Now I hear what they're talking about. And that was after I drove it hard, so I'm wondering if perhaps that might be a transmission issue. So that noise wasn't there initially. It's only there after it warms up a bit. Now it's up to operating temperature. And truthfully, I don't want to scare these other people on the road, but I want to do, with wheel bearings, you can get the noise to change a lot of times just by doing like a little slalom. It sounds like left front. Whenever I turn right, I hear the noise. But it's gone now. Totally gone. Yeah, left front wheel bearing is what I would say on that. Making a right turn, you hear the noise. That's when the left side gets more stress, and that's when you hear a bad wheel bearing. I did a video in the past about like having both wheels up off the ground and or stopping one of the wheels and listening for the wheel bearing noise. That's one way to do it. But another way, as many people suggested, is just taking it for a drive like this and doing that slalom. And it's, if you turn right and you hear the noise, it's the left wheel bearing. If you turn left and you hear the noise, it's the right wheel bearing. Similar to how it is with CV joints. So we've got wheel bearing issues. I don't know about the suspension. I'm not feeling issues with that. The brakes, maybe they're low, but they feel pretty good, honestly. As far as the engine's performing well. But that was interesting how that noise showed up after we pushed it hard. Maybe that's just coincidence, I'm not sure. Also, the air works. I mean, this is blowing cold air here at 255,000 miles. That's huge. So I'm not ready to give up on this car yet. Let's get it up on the lift and see what else we can find and pull some of these codes out of the check engine light here. It's got that light on, and see what we can figure out. Oh, sorry, didn't see you there. I believe I'm going to start with checking the codes. It does have a check engine light that's on. Might as well confirm the diagnosis of a timing chain problem.
Starting communication.
Starting communication and communicating with the vehicle. Give me them DCCs. Tell me, oh magic box, what the yellow light means. We have several. We have a P0455 evaporative gross leak. It's a gross leak. P0011 intake valve timing control bank 1. That sort of goes along in line with the timing chain theory. The P1448, which is a vent control valve. Not real sure what that one is. And a P0340, which is a camshaft sensor circuit bank 1, also falls in line with timing chainness. Okay, so I'm in the camp of this thing likely needs a timing chain. As far as the evaporative gross leak, hard to say on that. Let's just see what it has to say. It does have some stuff that are stored in here. Canister purge volume control solenoid and evap canister vent control valve are the components, the playas in the system. There's a huge hole, evaporative emissions hole somewhere. Now we know what the codes are. We'll do some research on our own outside of that, just for the heck of it. Might as well see if there are other systems and also transmission codes. Because with a car with this many miles on it, who knows? So no code stored for the transmission. Happy with that. Let's get this thing up in the air, look underneath it, look around at the suspension, look around at the engine, see what we can see. Because it's super dangerous checking tire pressures. I've said in the past that tires make a huge difference in a lot of ways. Well, not having the correct tire pressure also can make a huge difference in the ride quality of the vehicle and the noise and everything else. After driving it, I didn't feel anything, at least to me, that indicated that there was a problem with the suspension. I'm going to check the tires to see if they're overinflated. I'm going to look for them to be around 32, and then we'll go around and check the rest of the suspension and the undercarriage. And I can see through to these brakes, and so far they're looking good. Still going to take the wheels off and get up close and personal. Nope, that's 32. So that's good. But also these are performance tires, lower profile. I'm not familiar with this brand, but I do know some tires can look like they are fine. You know, this has plenty of tread and everything on it, but what can happen is the compound itself gets harder, and as the compound gets harder, it can give it a stiffer ride. I don't feel anything that might be alignment related. I'm walking by this area, going to the other side, and I smelled gas a little bit. Well, guess what's right here? Take a look. That's the charcoal canister for the evaporative emission system, and we have a code for that. I don't know if we have a code for the charcoal canister, but there's a code for a gross leak. And the fact that I smelled gasoline as I'm walking by here could mean an external leak somewhere. Also, pretty much on the money. In fact, slightly low. I'm still sticking to my theory that it's a tire issue. Fronts are also, these are 35, so it's really my theory of them being overinflated is not grounded at this point. But the tires themselves, we can do a rotation on them and see what happens. We're going to take all 4 off anyway. It's definitely not a tire pressure issue. Before I take the wheels off, I'm just going to try to shake them around, feel for loose suspension parts. Nothing here. I do this with back wheels or non-drive wheels to see if there's maybe a sticking caliper or something. Doesn't appear to be here. Well, look at that. That is something. Not sure what that something is, but because that's not tie rod. Something far more sinister. Let's get this up a little higher and see what we got. I believe I found the issue here with the looseness. Watch this lower ball joint.
Keep doing it.
That there be a bad ball joint. Now we did hear some wheel bearing noise over here, but with as bad as that ball joint is, I wonder if it's causing the tire to go over a whole bunch. Ooh, and I just found an issue with the tire. Check this out. See that bulge? That's a bad tire. So we're gonna, at the very least, look into replacing 2 of these tires anyway. Gonna get a look at everything underneath, and I'm gonna pull the wheels off and inspect the brakes and everything else. Looking at this front engine mount, it looks old, but not dead. And there wasn't anything with it clunking while it was shifting. Surprisingly few oil leaks or anything from under here. Maybe a little bit of one back here. I'm not gonna pull the transmission off for a rear main seal repair, but this looks like a classic Nissan power steering pump hose leak that they have. If you look right up on the back of the power steering pump there, you'll see a little bit of leakage. It's very common on Nissans of this vintage and would explain what we're seeing here. So it's not engine oil leak so much as a power steering fluid leak that I believe we're dealing with there. And that, I think, is a replacement of that power steering hose. Also, it looks like we definitely have power steering fluid leak from the power steering rack right there. So that may be something we might want to address. It is not life-threatening, it's just a power steering leak when we have 2 of those, and there wasn't any issue steering, but they appear to be the only leaks. I mean, for 200 some odd thousand miles, virtually no leaks on the engine and transmission. That's pretty stinking good. Well done, Nissan. Exhaust looks old, but fairly intact. You know, forgot to look up here. Like I said, there's some small leak somewhere. Could be up here. I'll have to plug off the exhaust and see if I can listen for where that leak might be, but it does sound like a very small exhaust leak somewhere. Not certain where that is. Yeah, this muffler's been welded on. A little bit of rust, nothing I'm surprised by at all. Quite a bit of stuff back here for the evaporative emissions. What if there's something I can visually see for an issue? Saw the filler neck and everything for the gas tank. A little bit of corrosion back there. Now, the dust boot on the strut has come loose, but so far I haven't seen any struts that have leaked anything out. They all look dry. So that's just the dust boot there that's deteriorated. But the strut itself, I don't see any issues with. It's interesting, this car has steel braided brake lines. That's kind of awesome, actually. And I think that's one of the reasons why the brakes felt so good. I've mentioned that in other videos, that I really like that upgrade of steel braided brake lines for a positive brake pedal feel. Nothing in here to indicate anything life-threatening. Bushings are old and cracked, but not broken. This is Nissan's weird control arm setup for the rear here. It's working now, but like I said, old and cracked, but not broken. I cannot condemn this car. It's actually in pretty decent shape as far as I can see, especially considering the mileage. Yeah, there's some rust and such, but it's not, it actually appears to be more superficial. Air conditioning dripping on me. And there's a brake fluid leak that I can show you better when I get the wheels off, which I'm about to do now. While I'm at this, I'm just going to take the opportunity to rotate the tires. We already know that this one has an issue. I'd rather have it in the back than up here in the front. Also, it seems that these are about due anyhow. Front brakes are worn all the way down, so replacement of the front brake pads is in its future. And I'm not sure how much material is left on the rotors, but if possible, I'll machine the rotors. As far as the front struts, same as the back, just these Dutz boots have come loose, but they're completely bone dry. And as far as a bounce test, I was bouncing it earlier, and there was no, it recovered quickly, so it didn't continue to bounce after I did that. But there's nothing to indicate that the struts are bad. They may be old, but I don't believe they're bad. Here we are at the rear. Once again, strut looks old, but not damaged. Back brakes, we're almost brand new. Well, I wouldn't say almost brand new. I'd say they probably got maybe 75% remaining, which is more than enough to say, yeah, these are fine. So back brakes are good. Maybe a service. Yeah, maybe a service. More of the same over here. Brakes look good. Strut, as we already knew from looking underneath, is in similar shape. Not leaking, but dust boot destroyed. Here's that leak I spoke about, right here at this brake line. I'm not sure where that's coming from, whether it's the connection needs to be tightened up. Looks like somebody's been in here, they've got those zip ties in place. So I imagine somebody had this off here at one time, but I don't know if the line's been compromised. If I'm to guess, that's what it is. We may need this brake line. It almost looks like it's kinked a little bit here too. Once again, struts. Now, I'm not seeing anything here that says these struts are in imminent danger, just that they're old. And the front brakes on this side, this is interesting. Front brakes on this side, if you look, are not completely worn away. Still plenty of pad left over here. This begs the question, does that mean the caliper on the other side is sticking, causing those pads to wear prematurely? Or is this leak up here causing less fluid to go to this caliper and therefore causing it to wear less? But either way, I guess we address things one thing at a time. Still going to need front pads, but I suppose when we tackle these brakes, we'll see if the caliper piston pushes in on the other side. If it does, then we're good. If it doesn't, then we'll probably have to replace a caliper over there also. I think that I've seen what I need to see. I think we can wrap this up. I got me a list of things on this car, but this list does not total up to, I think, replacement of this vehicle. I think we can work with what we have here. We just have to sort of go line by line and address these things. One of the main things I want to address is that left lower ball joint. I don't know if there really is a wheel bearing issue or not. With as loose as that is, I wonder if it's just moving the tire to a point to where it's making more noise, because it was pretty intermittent the way it worked. I mean, usually when I run into wheel bearing problems, they're there all the time. So I'm going to replace that left lower ball joint, take it out for a drive and see where we're at. As far as the suspension, I'm not seeing anything externally on the suspension that says, we need to replace it now. So we'll just let that go for now. Possibly I'll look into tires, because I think that this car could benefit from tires, or that would alleviate a lot of those issues. The leaks with the power steering rack and the power steering pump, I'm not sure if and how I'm going to approach those, because they're not severe, but at the same time, there are issues that are there. Timing chain, the codes that we found in the computer are a good indication that there could be a timing chain issue. I'll do a future video on the diagnosis of that. Evaporative emissions, same thing there. We'll see what we can do to track down that problem in a future video also. And I think that just leaves, oh yeah, the brakes in the front, finding out what's going on with this brake fluid leak on this side and why the pads are worn out a lot on the left side and not so much on the right side. Rear brakes look good. Once again, the suspension is all there. And I think that covers it. But I think we'll get Jerry back on the road with this car rather than trying to put him in a new one. And we'll have some good videos in the process. It'll be fun. If you have automotive questions not covered in this video, I'd ask you to head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. Welcome video there to tell you about the features to help you with automotive issues. If you wish to connect with me socially, I can be found on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, also Instagram. And I close each of my videos with be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and I'll see you next time on the next episode of Fixing It Forward.